It starts with a smile, not the real kind, the learned kind. You're maybe 8 years old, sitting at the dinner table, and you can feel it. The tension, the heaviness in the air. Someone's upset. Maybe it's your mother's silence. Maybe it's your father's voice, sharp like broken glass. And without anyone telling you, without a single word of instruction, something ancient inside you clicks into place. If I'm good enough, if I'm kind enough, maybe the fighting stops. Maybe if I smile wider, laugh louder, need less, maybe the chaos calms, and so you become it. The peacemaker, the easy one, the child who never causes problems, and everyone loves you for it. You're so mature for your age. You're such a good kid. You're so easy. But no one ever stops to ask what it cost you. Because here's what no one tells you about being kind. When kindness becomes your survival mechanism, when compassion is the armor you wear to avoid rejection, it stops being a choice. It becomes a prison. And today, we're going deep. Not into the beauty of kindness, but into its shadow. Into the part we don't talk about. The part where the kindest people you know are also the most exhausted, the most invisible, the most silently aching. Because if you've ever been the person everyone relies on but no one checks on, if you've ever smiled through your own pain just to make someone else comfortable, if you've ever wondered why being kind feels like slowly disappearing, this is for you. Let me tell you something about the human mind. It learns patterns faster than we realize. When you're a child, your brain is doing one thing above all else. It's learning how to stay safe, how to stay loved, how to survive in the only world you know, which is your family, your home, the people who are supposed to protect you. And if that world is unpredictable, if love feels conditional, if safety depends on how well you perform, your brain makes a calculation. It says, being kind works. Being agreeable keeps me safe. If I'm good, they won't leave. If I help, they'll need me. If I'm never a burden, maybe I'll be worth keeping. This isn't conscious. You don't sit there as a 7-year-old thinking, I shall now develop a people-pleasing defense mechanism. No, it happens in your body, in your nervous system, in the part of you that predates language, that operates on instinct, that will do anything, absolutely anything, to keep you from being abandoned. Psychologists call this parentification. It's when a child becomes the emotional caretaker, when your job isn't to be a child, but to regulate the adults around you. You learn to read the room before you speak. You learn to put your needs aside. You learn that your emotions are dangerous, and theirs are urgent. You become a tiny therapist in a world that should have been protecting you. You become the one who notices when mum's had a bad day, the one who knows when dad's about to lose his temper, the one who smooths things over before they explode. And slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing, you disappear. Not physically, but emotionally. The real you, the one with needs and boundaries and wants, gets buried, and in its place grows a version designed to survive. The helpful one. The reliable one, the one who never complains. And here's the cruelest part. The world rewards you for it. People praise your selflessness. They admire your patience. They tell you how lucky they are to have you. Teachers love you because you're easy to manage. Parents brag about you because you don't cause trouble. Friends rely on you because you're always there. But none of them see the cost. None of them notice that while you're holding everyone else together, you're falling apart in silence. Because that's the dark side of learned kindness. It doesn't feel like kindness at all. It feels like obligation. Like a debt you can never fully pay. Like if you stop even for a moment, everything will collapse and it will be your fault. Studies show that people who chronically put others first, who struggle to say no, experience significantly higher levels of anxiety and depression, not because they're weak, but because they've been taught that their worth is measured by what they give, not by who they are. And when your worth is transactional, rest feels like failure, boundaries feel like betrayal, and asking for help feels like proving you were never strong enough to begin with, so you keep giving, even when you have nothing left. Because stopping would mean facing the question you've been avoiding your whole life. If I'm not useful, am I still lovable? Think about how this shows up in your everyday life. You say yes to things you don't want to do. You agree to help even when you're already overwhelmed. You stay late at work, not because the job requires it, but because you can't bear the thought of being seen as anything less than dedicated. You answer texts immediately, even when you're exhausted, because leaving someone on read feels cruel. You let people vent to you for hours, absorbing their stress, their anger, their sadness, and when they finally ask, "How are you?" you say, "I'm fine," and redirect the conversation back to them, because that's what you've been trained to do, to make yourself small, to take up less space, to need less than you give, and over time you start to believe that this is just who you are, that you're naturally selfless, that you don't really need much, that you're just different from other people who seem to have no problem asking for what they want. But that's not who you are, that's who you had to become. There's a difference between authentic generosity and compulsive caretaking. One comes from abundance, the other comes from fear. When you give from abundance, it feels good. It's a choice. You have energy to spare, love to share, and offering it to others brings you joy. There's no resentment afterward, no secret scorekeeping, no quiet voice asking, "What about me?" But when you give from fear, when you give because you're terrified of being rejected, abandoned, or seen as selfish, that's not generosity, that's survival. And the human body can only survive for so long before it starts to break down. You might notice it in small ways at first. You're more tired than usual, you get sick more often, you have trouble sleeping, or you sleep too much. Your shoulders carry a tension that never quite releases. Your jaw is always clenched. Headaches become your constant companion. Or maybe it shows up emotionally. You feel numb more often than you'd like to admit. You scroll through your phone for hours, not really seeing anything, just filling the space where feelings used to be. You don't cry anymore, even when you want to. You've learned to swallow it, to push it down, to keep moving. Because if you stop moving, if you stop being useful, you might have to face the truth. That you're exhausted, that you're lonely, that you've been giving and giving and giving, and somewhere along the way you lost yourself completely. And the most heartbreaking part, most people don't even notice. They don't notice that you're quieter than you used to be. They don't notice that your smile doesn't reach your eyes anymore. They don't notice that you're slowly fading, becoming a ghost in your own life, because they're used to you being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who always has it together, and you've gotten so good at pretending that even you sometimes forget it's a performance. But your body remembers, your body keeps the score, and one day, something small happens. Someone asks you for one more favour, one more hour of your time, one more piece of your energy, and something inside you breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a thread pulled too tight for too long, finally snapping, and you realise you can't do this anymore. But even then, even in that moment of breaking, the first thing you feel isn't relief. It's guilt. Because how dare you prioritise yourself? How dare you say no? How dare you admit that you're tired, that you're hurting, that you can't keep carrying everyone else's weight? That guilt, that shame, that voice telling you that your needs are selfish. That's the conditioning. That's the lie you've been living with for so long that it feels like truth. But it's not truth, it's trauma. And recognising that difference is the first step toward healing. Here's what nobody tells you about chronic kindness. It has a shadow, and that shadow is resentment. Not the loud kind, not the kind you express at dinner tables or in arguments. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone. The kind that makes you lie awake at 2 a.m, replaying moments where you said yes when you meant no, where you smiled when you wanted to scream, where you carried someone else's emotional weight while your own needs went unspoken. And the worst part, you feel guilty about the resentment, because kind people aren't supposed to feel angry. They're not supposed to keep score, they're not supposed to think, "What about me?" But you do. You think it all the time, in the shower, in your car, in those quiet moments when your phone stops buzzing and you realise nobody's asking how you are, nobody's checking in, nobody's offering to carry you the way you've been carrying them. And here's where the psychology gets dark. Because when you suppress your needs for long enough, when you bury your boundaries deep enough, those feelings don't disappear. They calcify. Psychologists call this emotional debt. It's the accumulated weight of every time you gave when you didn't want to. Every time you said it's fine when it wasn't. Every time you prioritized someone else's comfort over your own truth. And that debt? It always comes due. Sometimes it comes out sideways. A passive-aggressive comment. A sudden coldness towards someone who didn't deserve it. An explosion over something small because you've been swallowing the big things for years. Sometimes it turns inward. You become numb, disconnected. You start going through the motions of kindness without feeling anything at all. You smile because you're supposed to. You help because it's what you do. You show up because if you don't, who will? But inside, there's nothing, just exhaustion, and a quiet voice whispering, "When is it my turn?" I want you to sit with something for a moment. Think about the last time someone genuinely asked how you were doing. Not the casual, "How are you?" That's really just a greeting. But someone who looked you in the eyes and said, "No, really? How are you?" Can you remember? Was it recently? Or has it been so long that you can't even recall? Now think about the last time you asked someone else. Probably yesterday, maybe even today. Because that's the pattern, isn't it? You're always the one holding space for others. You're the friend people call when they're going through something. You're the shoulder to cry on, the steady presence, the person who always knows what to say. But when you're struggling, you handle it alone. Not because people don't care, but because you've trained them not to ask. You've trained them to believe you're fine, that you don't need what others need, and over time that becomes your identity. The strong one. The one who has it all together, the one who never falls apart, but strength, when it's forced, when it's performed, when it's the only option you've ever been given, that's not strength at all. That's armour, and armour is heavy. Research from the University of Berkeley found something fascinating and heartbreaking. Acts of kindness only increase well-being when they're voluntary and authentic. When kindness is performed out of guilt, fear, or the desperate need to be needed, it has the opposite effect. It doesn't heal, it corrodes, it doesn't connect, it isolates. Because you're not being seen for who you are, you're being valued for what you provide. And deep down, you know it. You know that if you stopped being useful, if you stopped being available, if you stopped accommodating everyone else's needs, they might not stay. And that fear, that ancient primal fear of abandonment, is what keeps you trapped. Because for people who learned early that love is conditional, that safety must be earned through service, saying no doesn't feel like self-care, it feels like self-destruction. So you keep saying yes, even when it's killing you. Because the dark side of kindness isn't cruelty, it's the slow, silent disappearance of yourself. And the tragedy is, most people don't even notice you're gone. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. You have a friend who only calls when they need something, and every time they call, you answer. You listen, you help, you give advice, you show up. And when you hang up, you feel empty, used maybe. But you can't quite name it because they're going through something hard. And what kind of person would you be if you weren't there for them? Or maybe it's your family. They expect you to host the holidays, coordinate the gatherings, remember everyone's birthdays. And you do it, year after year, because someone has to. But no one ever asks if you want to. No one ever offers to help, they just assume you'll handle it. Because you always do. Or maybe it's at work. You take on extra projects, cover for colleagues, stay late to finish things that aren't your responsibility, and your boss praises you for being a team player, but you never get the promotion, never get the raise, because why would they change anything when you're already giving everything for free? These aren't isolated incidents, they're patterns. Patterns that reveal a deeper truth, that your kindness has become something people expect, not something they appreciate. And the moment you pull back even slightly, they notice. Not because they miss you, but because they miss what you were doing for them. That's when you realise the love you've been receiving wasn't unconditional, it was transactional. And that realisation, it breaks something in you. Because you've been operating under the belief that if you just give enough, love enough, sacrifice enough, eventually someone will give that same energy back to you. But it doesn't work that way. Not when your relationships are built on imbalance. Not when your role is to be the giver and their role is to take. And the hardest part? You can't blame them, because you taught them this is who you are. You taught them you don't have needs. You taught them you're always available. You taught them their comfort matters more than yours. And now, changing that dynamic feels impossible. Because if you suddenly start setting boundaries, they'll think you've changed. They'll say you're not the person they used to know. And they'll be right. Because the person they knew was drowning, and you're finally trying to come up for air. There's something else that happens when you live like this for long enough. You start to lose your sense of what's normal, what's healthy, what you actually deserve. You start accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. You start accepting the bare minimum and feeling grateful for it. Because at least it's something, right? At least they're still here. You tell yourself that everyone has flaws, that you're being too sensitive, that you're expecting too much. But deep down, there's a part of you that knows you're settling, that knows you deserve more, that knows this isn't what love is supposed to feel like. Love isn't supposed to feel like constantly walking on eggshells. It's not supposed to feel like you have to earn it every single day. It's not supposed to feel like one wrong move and it all falls apart. Love is supposed to feel safe, steady, like you can breathe. But you haven't been able to breathe in years because you've been so busy making sure everyone else can breathe that you forgot you need air too. And that's the thing about being the kind one, the giving one, the selfless one. People forget you're human. They forget you have limits. They forget you can break. And when you finally do break, when you finally reach your limit and say, I can't anymore, they're shocked. How could you? How could you let them down? How could you be so selfish? And in that moment, you see it clearly. They never saw you as a person. They saw you as a resource. Something to be used, something to make their lives easier. And that hurts more than anything, because you gave everything. You sacrificed yourself. You made yourself small. You did everything right. And it still wasn't enough, because it was never about being enough. It was about you not knowing that you were allowed to stop trying to be. Let me tell you about mirror neurons. They're part of your brain's wiring. These tiny cells that fire when you see someone else in pain, in joy, in fear. They're what allow you to feel what others feel. They're the biological foundation of empathy, and they're beautiful. They're what make us human. What connect us, what allow us to love, to comfort, to understand each other without words. But here's what most people don't know. Mirror neurons don't have an off switch. If you're someone with a highly sensitive nervous system, someone who was trained early to attune to others' emotions, your mirror neurons are always on, always absorbing, always feeling, always trying to regulate not just your emotions but everyone else's too. And that's where kindness becomes dangerous. Because when you feel other people's pain as if it's your own, boundaries stop being clear. You start taking responsibility for emotions that aren't yours. Someone's sad, you feel obligated to fix it. Someone's angry, you feel like you caused it. Someone's disappointed, you feel like you failed them, even when it has nothing to do with you. Even when their emotions are their own responsibility, even when you had nothing to do with why they're feeling that way, you still absorb it, you still carry it, you still make it your problem to solve. Neuroscience tells us that chronic empathy without boundaries leads to something called compassion fatigue. It's not burnout. It's deeper than that. It's the erosion of your emotional self. Your brain literally can't distinguish between their suffering and yours anymore. The stress response fires constantly. Cortisol floods your system. Your immune function drops. Your sleep fragments. Your body starts keeping the score of every emotion you've absorbed. Your body is trying to tell you something. You can't save everyone. You were never supposed to. But if you're someone who grew up believing that love is earned through caretaking, through emotional labor, through being the thermostat of every room you enter, this message doesn't land. Because rest feels selfish, boundaries feel cruel, and protecting your energy feels like abandoning people who need you. But here's the truth they don't teach you. Empathy without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. When you absorb everyone's emotions, when you carry burdens that were never yours to carry, when you make yourself small so others can be big, you're not helping them grow. You're teaching them that your needs don't matter, and worse, you're teaching yourself the same thing. Think about the last time someone asked, "Yeah, how are you?" Did you tell them the truth? Or did you say, "I'm fine," and quickly redirect the conversation back to them? Because that's what kind people do. They deflect, they minimize, they make their pain smaller so it doesn't inconvenience anyone. But every time you do that, every time you silence your own needs, you're reinforcing the belief that you don't deserve to take up space. And here's what breaks my heart. The kindest people I know, the ones who would give you their last dollar, their last hour, their last breath, are the same ones who can't ask for help. Not because they don't need it, but because they've learned that needing is weakness, that struggling is failure, that if they can't handle everything alone, they're not strong enough, not good enough, not worth the trouble, and that belief is a lie. But it's a lie you've been told so many times, in so many ways, by so many people who benefited from your silence, that it started to feel like truth. So let me say this clearly. Your pain matters. Your exhaustion is real. Your resentment is valid. And you're not obligated to bleed yourself dry for people who won't even notice you're empty. Because the dark side of kindness isn't that you care too much. It's that you've been taught to care for everyone except yourself. And that, more than anything, is what needs to change. There's something called the empathy paradox. It's when the people who feel the most are the ones who are expected to carry the most. The ones who can sense when someone's hurting are the ones everyone turns to. The ones with the biggest hearts are the ones who end up holding everyone else's pain. And it makes sense, doesn't it? If you can feel what others feel, of course you're going to respond. Of course you're going to help. Of course you're going to show up. But what happens when you feel everything, all the time, and no one's there to hold you? What happens when you're so busy regulating everyone else's emotions that you don't have space for your own? What happens when the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you're too tired to carry it anymore, but you can't put it down because you're afraid of what will happen if you do? You break. Not loudly, but quietly. In the privacy of your own mind, in the moments when you're alone and the mask finally comes off. You break when you're driving home from work and a song comes on that makes you cry for reasons you can't explain. You break when you're lying in bed at night staring at the ceiling, wondering why you feel so empty when you're surrounded by people. You break when you realise that you've given so much of yourself away that you don't know who you are anymore without someone needing you. And that breaking, as painful as it is actually the beginning of something, because it's the moment you finally admit the truth, that this isn't sustainable, that you can't keep living like this, that something has to change, and that something is you, not because you're broken, but because you've been breaking yourself for others for far too long. Here's what happens to highly empathetic people who never learn boundaries. They become emotional sponges. They walk into a room and immediately absorb the energy. If someone's anxious, they become anxious. If someone's sad, they become sad. If there's tension, they feel it in their body like a physical weight. And because they feel it so intensely, they try to fix it. They try to make everyone comfortable. They try to smooth over the rough edges. They try to be the buffer between people and their discomfort. But in doing so, they never learn to sit with their own discomfort. They never learn to let others sit with theirs. They never learn that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow someone to struggle without rushing in to save them. Because saving people from their own emotions doesn't help them. It teaches them that they can't handle it. It teaches them to depend on you instead of developing their own emotional regulation. And it teaches you that your value lies in fixing, not in simply being. So you become a fixer, a rescuer. Someone who can't just sit with someone in their pain. You have to do something. You have to make it better. You have to prove that you're useful. But love doesn't require usefulness. Connection doesn't require fixing. Sometimes people just need you to be there, to witness, to hold space, not to solve. And when you can't learn to do that, when every emotion becomes your emergency, you end up exhausted. Because you're not just living your life, you're living everyone else's too. And that's not sustainable. That's not healthy. That's not what you were meant to do. You were meant to be connected, yes, but not consumed. You were meant to care, yes, but not to carry. You were meant to help, yes, but not to disappear in the process. There's a moment that happens to kind people, usually in their 30s, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. It's when you're alone, maybe late at night, and you suddenly realise you don't know who you are anymore. Because you've spent so long being what everyone needed you to be. The supportive friend, the reliable co-worker, the understanding partner, the one who holds everything together. But when all those roles are stripped away, when no one's watching, when there's no one to help or fix or accommodate, who are you? What do you actually want? What do you like? What makes you happy when happiness isn't measured by someone else's smile? And the silence that follows that question, it's terrifying. Because somewhere along the way, kindness stopped being something you do. It became who you are. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure. It's when your sense of self becomes so intertwined with a role, with a performance, that you can't separate the two anymore. You're not kind because you choose to be. You're kind because you don't know how to be anything else. And here's where it gets really painful. When your identity is built on being good, on being kind, on being selfless. You can't afford to be human. You can't have bad days. You can't be petty or jealous or tired. You can't prioritize yourself without feeling like you're betraying who you're supposed to be. Because if the kind person gets angry, if the good person says no, if the selfless person finally asks for something, who are they then? And that question, that identity crisis, is what keeps so many people trapped. Because admitting that kindness has become a performance means admitting that maybe people don't actually know you. Maybe they love the version of you that serves them, but the real you, the messy, complicated, sometimes selfish, sometimes tired, sometimes angry you, that version might be too much, and so you keep performing. You keep smiling when you want to cry. You keep helping when you need help. You keep giving when you're running on empty. Because the alternative, the possibility that if you stop being useful, you'll stop being loved, that's a pain too deep to face. Let me paint you a picture. You're at a dinner party. Everyone's laughing, talking, enjoying themselves, and you're there, smiling, nodding, asking all the right questions. You're making sure everyone has what they need, refilling drinks, checking in, being the glue that holds the conversation together, and then, for just a moment, you step outside, maybe to get some air, maybe to take a breath, and in that quiet you realise you haven't said a single thing about yourself all night. No one's asked about your life. No one's checked in on how you're doing. No one's noticed that you've been quieter than usual, that your smile is a little strained, that you're exhausted, and you think about going back inside and saying something, saying, oh, hey, can I talk about something that's been bothering me? But then you imagine their faces, the slight shift in energy, the way the mood would change, the way you'd become the problem instead of the solution, and so you don't. You swallow it, you put the smile back on, and you go back inside and continue being what they need you to be. Because that's safer, that's familiar, that's the role you've always played. But inside, a small part of you dies. The part that still hopes someone will see through the performance, the part that still believes you deserve to be known, not just needed. And over time, that part of you gets smaller and smaller, until one day, you can't even hear it anymore. That's what identity foreclosure does. It silences the real you. It buries your needs so deep that you forget you even have them. And the scary part? Most people never realize it's happening. They just wake up one day, decades into adulthood, and realize they've been living someone else's life. Not the life they chose, the life they were expected to live. The good child, the helpful sibling, the dependable friend, the perfect partner, the selfless parent, but never just themselves. Because who are you when you're not being useful? Who are you when you're not fixing, helping, solving, accommodating? That's the question that haunts kind people. And it's the question that most of them are too afraid to answer. Because answering it would mean admitting that they don't know, that they've lost themselves completely, that the person everyone loves isn't even real. And if that's true, then what? Do you start over? Do you risk losing everyone by showing them who you really are? Do you have the courage to disappoint people in service of finding yourself? These are the questions that keep kind people awake at night. These are the thoughts that make them feel selfish for even considering putting themselves first. Because they've been conditioned to believe that their value lies in what they do for others, not in who they are. And undoing that conditioning, that takes years, that takes courage. That takes a willingness to sit with the discomfort of being seen as less than perfect. But here's what I need you to understand. Authentic kindness, the kind that heals instead of depletes, the kind that connects instead of isolates. It doesn't come from performance, it comes from overflow. When you're full, when your needs are met, when your boundaries are respected, when you actually like yourself, kindness flows naturally. You give because you want to, not because you have to. You help because it feels good, not because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. You care for others while still caring for yourself. But to get there, you have to do something terrifying. You have to take off the mask. You have to risk letting people see the version of you that isn't always composed, always helpful, always fine. You have to say, I can't today. You have to say, I need help. You have to say, I'm not okay and I need you to see me. And yes, some people will be disappointed. Some people will push back. Some will call you selfish. Some will withdraw because they only wanted the version of you that served them, and that will hurt. But it will also free you, because the people who stay, the ones who can handle your humanity, who don't need you to be perfect to be worthy, those are your people. And the kindness you share with them won't feel like drowning. It will feel like breathing, because you'll finally be giving from a place of wholeness. Not brokenness desperately trying to prove it's enough, Think about what it would feel like to wake up one day and not immediately think about what everyone else needs. To not check your phone first thing to see who needs your help, your advice, your time, to just be. To sit with your coffee and think about what you want to do that day. Not what you should do, not what others expect, just what would bring you joy, that feeling, that freedom. It's not selfish. It's human, and you deserve it just as much as anyone else. But getting there requires you to unlearn everything you've been taught about your worth. It requires you to challenge the belief that love is something you have to earn through constant giving. It requires you to sit with the discomfort of being rather than doing. And that's hard. Because for so long, doing has been your identity. Helping has been your value. Giving has been your proof that you matter. But what if you matter just because you exist? What if your worth isn't tied to your usefulness? What if you could be loved even when you have nothing to offer? That's the shift. That's the healing. That's the journey from performance to presence. And it starts with one simple, terrifying act. Putting yourself first. Not always, not in every situation, but sometimes. In the moments that matter. In the moments when your body is screaming for rest and your mind is begging for peace. In those moments you choose you. And every time you do, you're rewriting the story you've been telling yourself your whole life. The story that says you're only valuable when you're giving. The story that says your needs are less important than everyone else's. You're replacing that story with a new one. One that says, I matter too. And that story, as simple as it sounds, has the power to change everything. So where do you go from here? If you're someone who's just realized that your kindness has been costing you yourself, if you're sitting with the weight of years of unspoken needs and swallowed boundaries, if you're finally ready to stop disappearing, the first step isn't action, it's permission. Permission to feel the resentment without guilt. Permission to be tired without shame. Permission to want more than you've been allowing yourself to want. Because healing doesn't start with fixing yourself. It starts with accepting that you were never broken. You were just taught to believe your needs were too much. And that belief, as deeply embedded as it is, can be unlearned. But it requires something radical. It requires you to start treating yourself with the same kindness you've been giving everyone else. I know, it sounds simple. It's not. Because when you've spent your whole life last on your own list, prioritizing yourself feels wrong. It feels selfish, indulgent, like you're taking something you don't deserve. But here's what therapists know, what research confirms, what every recovered people pleaser eventually learns. Self-compassion isn't selfishness, it's survival. Studies show that people who practice self-compassion, who speak to themselves with the same gentleness they'd offer a friend, have lower anxiety, better relationships, and more sustainable kindness. You cannot give from an empty cup. You cannot sustain compassion for others when you have none for yourself. You cannot model healthy relationships if you're in a toxic relationship with your own needs. So start small. The next time someone asks you for something, pause. Just 3 seconds, that's all. Before you say yes, ask yourself, do I have the capacity for this right now? Not should I? Not what will they think if I don't? Just, can I, genuinely, without resentment? And if the answer is no, say it. I can't right now. I don't have the bandwidth. I need to take care of myself first. It will feel terrible the first time. Your chest will tighten. Your mind will scream that you're being cruel, that you're letting people down, that they'll hate you. But that feeling isn't truth. It's conditioning. It's the old belief system trying to pull you back into the role that kept you safe as a child, but is suffocating you as an adult. And every time you sit with that discomfort, every time you say no and don't immediately apologize or over-explain or fix it, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching your nervous system that boundaries don't lead to abandonment, that your needs matter, that you can be loved even when you're not useful. Another practice. Start noticing your internal dialogue. When you make a mistake, what do you say to yourself? When you're tired, how do you respond? When you need something, what's the voice in your head telling you? For most chronically kind people, that voice is brutal. It's the voice that says, you're being lazy. Other people have it worse. Stop being so sensitive. You should be able to handle this. And here's what you do. You talk back, not with aggression, with compassion. I'm not lazy. I'm exhausted because I've been carrying too much. Other people's struggles don't invalidate mine. My sensitivity is not a flaw. It's how I'm wired, and it deserves care. I don't have to handle everything alone. This isn't affirmations, this is reparenting. It's becoming the voice that says, you're allowed to rest, you're allowed to need, you're allowed to take up space. And slowly, over weeks and months, something shifts. You start to notice that when you say no, the world doesn't end. That when you prioritize yourself, people either adjust or reveal they were only there for what you could give them. And yes, you'll lose some connections. Because some relationships were built entirely on your self-sacrifice, and when you stop sacrificing, those relationships can't survive, and that hurts. But it's also clarifying, because what you're losing isn't real love, it's transaction, and what you're making space for is the kind of connection where you don't have to earn your place, where you can be tired and still be treasured, where you can have needs and still be valued, where your kindness is a gift, not a requirement. That's the reconstruction, not becoming less kind, becoming kind to yourself too. And here's what's beautiful. When you finally learn to hold yourself with the same tenderness you've been giving others, your kindness becomes more powerful, not less, because it's no longer coming from depletion, it's coming from love. Real, sustainable, honest love, the kind that includes you. I want you to imagine something. Imagine waking up tomorrow and not feeling the weight of everyone else's expectations on your chest. Imagine moving through your day and only doing the things you genuinely want to do, not the things you feel obligated to do. Imagine someone asking you for help, and instead of immediately saying yes, you actually consider whether you have the capacity. And if you don't, you say no. And you don't apologize, you don't over-explain, you just say no. And the world keeps turning. The person finds another way, and you realize that you were never as indispensable as you thought you were. That sounds scary, but it's also freeing, because the burden of being needed is heavier than you realize. The pressure to always be available, always be helpful, always be the solution, it's crushing you. And the moment you put it down, even just for a moment, you feel lighter. You feel like you can breathe again. That's what healing looks like. Not becoming cold, not becoming selfish, just becoming balanced, giving and receiving in equal measure, caring for others while honoring yourself, being kind without disappearing, and the people who truly love you, who see you as more than just what you can do for them, they'll support this shift. They'll be glad you're finally taking care of yourself. Because healthy people don't want you to sacrifice yourself for them. They want you to be whole, and the ones who get upset when you start setting boundaries, they were never there for you. They were there for what you could give them. And realizing that is painful. But it's also necessary. Because you can't build a life of authentic connection on a foundation of resentment and exhaustion. You can't love others well when you don't love yourself at all. So the work, the real work, is learning to be as kind to yourself as you are to everyone else. It's learning to check in with yourself the way you check in with others. To ask yourself, what do I need right now? And actually listen to the answer. It's learning to rest without guilt, to say no without shame, to take up space without apology. It's learning that your needs are not a burden, your feelings are not too much, your presence is not contingent on your usefulness. You are enough, just as you are, without doing anything, without giving anything, without being anything other than yourself. And that truth, as simple as it sounds, is revolutionary for people who've spent their whole lives believing the opposite. So I'll say it again. You are enough, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And the kindness you've been giving to everyone else, you deserve that too. There's a Buddhist teaching that says, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. Think about that for a moment. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. All the kindness you've been extending to others, all the understanding, all the patience, all the forgiveness. If you're not giving that to yourself, you're only doing half the work. You're pouring from a broken cup. You're trying to light the way for others while sitting in your own darkness. You're trying to heal the world while your own wounds stay open. And that's not sustainable. That's not healthy. That's not what you were meant to do. You were meant to extend compassion to all beings, and that includes you. So start small. Start with one act of self-kindness today. Maybe it's saying no to something that would drain you. Maybe it's taking a nap when you're tired instead of pushing through. Maybe it's letting yourself cry instead of swallowing the tears. Whatever it is, do it. And notice how it feels. It might feel uncomfortable at first. It might feel selfish, but sit with it. Because on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. The freedom to exist without constantly proving your worth. The freedom to rest without guilt. The freedom to be human. And that freedom, once you taste it, once you really feel it, you'll never want to go back to the prison of performative kindness, because you'll realize that true kindness doesn't require you to disappear. It just requires you to show up as you are, whole, imperfect, human, and that's enough. It's always been enough. So let me bring this back to where we started. That child at the dinner table, the one who learned to smile through the chaos, who made themselves small to keep the peace, who discovered that kindness was the price of love. That child is still inside you, and they need you to hear something. It wasn't your fault. You did what you had to do to survive. Your kindness kept you safe when nothing else could. Your selflessness protected you from abandonment. Your performance earned you the love you so desperately needed, but you're not that child anymore. You don't have to earn your place. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to disappear to be loved. The dark side of kindness, the self-erasure, the exhaustion, the invisible resentment, it's not a flaw in who you are. It's a response to what you endured, and it can change. Because kindness, real kindness, isn't about sacrifice. It's about balance, giving and receiving, speaking and listening, caring for others while honoring yourself. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be imperfect, messy, human, and still be deserving of love. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And maybe that's where healing truly begins. Not in becoming less kind, but in finally, after all these years, being kind to the one person you've been neglecting all along, yourself. Because here's the truth. The world doesn't need more people who give until they break. The world needs people who know how to give from a place of fullness, who understand that self-care isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't cruel, that rest isn't laziness. The world needs people who can model what healthy kindness looks like, the kind that doesn't leave you depleted, the kind that doesn't require you to disappear, the kind that includes you in the circle of compassion you extend to everyone else. And you can be that person, not by doing more, but by doing less, by releasing the need to be everything to everyone, by accepting that you're human, with limits and needs and feelings that matter just as much as anyone else's. By understanding that the most radical act of kindness you can offer this world is to stop abandoning yourself. Because when you do that, when you finally come home to yourself, something beautiful happens. Your kindness becomes sustainable. It becomes joyful. It becomes a choice, not a compulsion. And the people around you benefit from that too. Because they're no longer relating to a performance. They're relating to a person. A whole, real, honest person who can give and receive in equal measure. That's the other side of kindness, the side where compassion doesn't erase the self, where generosity flows from abundance, not fear, where love is given freely, not desperately, and getting there doesn't require you to become someone new. It just requires you to remember who you were before the world taught you to be small. Before you learned to smile through the pain, before you discovered that silence was safer than speaking, before you became the person everyone could count on but no one really knew. That version of you, the one who hasn't been performing, who hasn't been pretending, who hasn't been giving themselves away piece by piece, that version is still in there, waiting, hoping, ready to come back, and all they need is your permission. Permission to exist without earning it. Permission to be imperfect without shame. Permission to be seen, truly seen as they are. And when you give yourself that permission, when you finally let that version of you come forward, you realize something profound. You're not losing your kindness, you're reclaiming it. Because kindness was never supposed to cost you yourself. It was supposed to connect you to others while keeping you connected to you. And now, finally, it can. Your presence is enough. It always was. You don't need to keep proving it. You don't need to keep earning it. You don't need to keep sacrificing yourself to be worthy of love. You already are. And the moment you truly believe that, everything changes. Not overnight, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, surely. You start showing up differently. You start speaking differently. You start existing differently. Not as someone who's trying to earn their place in the world, but as someone who knows they already belong. And that, more than anything, is what healing looks like. not fixing yourself, not becoming perfect, not never struggling again, just belonging to yourself first, so that when you extend kindness to others, it's a gift, not a debt, not a desperate bid for approval, not a performance designed to keep you safe, just a gift, given freely, from a place of love. That's the kindness the world needs. That's the kindness you deserve to give and receive, and it starts now, with you, choosing yourself, not instead of others, but alongside them, because you matter too. You always did.